Hello, my darling friends. Welcome back to my channel. I don't even know what happened this past month. I cannot believe it's already over. I feel like I say that every single time, but I'm so excited to talk to you guys about the books that I finished in the month of June. It's so crazy to me because I feel like I'm steadily reading a less amount of books each month. But yet when I look back, I don't feel like I didn't read that much. And so maybe I'm just reading more quantity over quality, or who knows, maybe I just found balance. I have no idea. But regardless, I'm excited to talk to you guys about the books that I read. We are trying out a little bit of a different setting going on, obviously, in the background than I normally film in. I do really want to be able to film my more sit-down book videos in the same room as my shelves, but I just feel like I've been having a little bit of trouble figuring out the configuration, especially with lighting too. That's always tricky, but it's something that's constantly changing. So we're trying it out, and it could be ever changing. This month, I read so much fantasy. In fact, every single book that I read had fantasy or science fiction or some kind of magical element to it. So I feel like it's just the mood I'm in, and I just went with it, and I had a really good time. I think what I want to start with is the one book that I actually ended up DNFing, which is kind of sad, but when I find myself really just slogging through a book, having a really hard time getting through it, there's got to be that point where you just ask yourself, if I've stopped having fun, what's the point of continuing? So I'm going to start there, and that is a book called Burn For Me by Ilona Andrews. The reason why I ended up picking up this book is because I read another book by this same author duo this month and I absolutely loved it, so I thought maybe I would go back into their backlist and try to read something else by them, maybe find a new series that I love while I'm waiting for the next book and the one that I did love to come out, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. But in this book, it kind of gives me an urban fantasy feeling with X-Men vibes almost. In this world, there was a serum that was created that ended up giving people supernatural abilities, a whole slew of them, but they do seem to be categorized into different types of magic. It's very common for certain people from certain families to have similar magic. But in the beginning, when the serum came out and it was quickly realized that humankind cannot be trusted with otherworldly, powerful magic, they ended up putting the serum under lock and key, but it was too late. The serum had already entered into the human bloodlines and the human race, and as they started to get married, they noticed that their children were also having magic passed down to them. So that really created this society where it's really important, if you have a powerful magic, to kind of screen the people that you're dating and could potentially marry so that you can continue that strong magic in your bloodline. There are certain families which are called houses, and certain people with really powerful magic called primes, and we have our female main character who is not from a powerful magic family, and really what we know about her magic is that she can sense when other people are lying, and is something she keeps under wraps, because if you have this specific ability, I think it's called truth seeking, you are generally taken by the military and you have to become like an interrogator, and you do not really get a choice in that. And it's a very deadly profession because obviously as a truth seeker, wars can be won or lost by knowing intel. So all you would need would be to capture somebody from the other side and have a truth seeker tell you whether or not they're being truthful in what they're saying. All of that on paper sounds so interesting to me. I really did like the world. The one thing I will say specifically about the world that I did not like is I generally am hard to confuse in fantasy series. I feel like just because I've been reading it for, I don't know, since I was 10, so 20 years now, I am familiar with a lot of different types of magic. I feel like generally I can understand magic systems well. There were a few things that were very confusing in my opinion about this. For example, there were these arcane circles that people in houses in the powerful families had been taught to use to be able to amplify their power. And it was just kind of a mention, and I wanted to delve deeper into that because they became important in certain parts of the story, and I still felt lost. I think two of my main issues were that it was confusing, but also while I was reading it, on paper, I loved the world, but while I was reading it, I just didn't. And I think a lot of it had to do with really larger than life characters. Like they almost felt like caricatures of bad guys or caricatures of main characters. And what I mean by that is these characters had really, really exaggerated traits about them that for me just did not really work. It kind of just seemed very fake. Like when I was reading this and I was reading about this certain bad guy or whatever, I was just kind of like, he is very much an on the paper villain and he doesn't seem like he has very much depth at all, and he was almost childlike in his villainy, if that makes sense. Because of that, I ended up getting probably about 100 pages from the end and I just could not. And I think a big part of this too is, and I ended up doing something bad and skipping to the end, and I was just like, I gotta know what happens, even though I don't care to like sit down and use hours to read or whatever. But the male main character in this, I felt like they were trying to portray him as this mysterious, this morally gray type of character, but really he just was a character who had zero regard for human life. Some of the things that he did really just kind of left a bad taste in my mouth, even specifically to our female main character. It was kind of just like torture first, ask questions later, and that's not the kind of male main character I want to read about. I just felt like he couldn't come back from that for me. Even towards the end of this book, our female main character had the same feelings, and then it just added this weird dynamic where our male main character just kind of felt like possessive obsessive, and that might continue through to the rest of the series. So I just decided for me that was not it. I will say, when I looked online, especially trying to screen this book, there's no spice in this book, but I feel like the way that they spoke is setting it up for probably a lot of spice in the rest of the series. And that also was something I didn't love. Our female main character, when she first met our male main character, the way that she talked about him, it was always just, oh, I'm picturing him this way. And I'm just like, I don't like that. I don't feel any connection to this male main character. I don't care about him, and I don't really want to read about him physically when we know nothing about him other than he might be a sadist. This one was not for me, which is really disappointing because later in this video I did read a book by this author duo that I really, really loved. Moving on, because I did talk about a book that I DNF'd for far too long, but I am nothing if not thorough. The first book that I read this month was actually Recursion by Blake Crouch. I read Dark Matter last year in November. I couldn't put it down. I think I read it in less than 24 hours and I loved it. So Recursion has really been on my radar for a while, especially because multiple of my favorite YouTubers have read it and loved it. They mentioned this incredible love story, and it was actually my local book club's pick for the month. It was one that I had put in the pot. Basically what we do is at the end of the year, we end up putting 2 picks that we would love to read in this jar and we pick them out from there. Both of mine were picked this year, which is so exciting. The first one was The Bright Years, which we read in April, and then Recursion we just read. And I really enjoyed this book. I think that it was so well thought out. I think it made me think a lot. There was a lot of, as you're reading it, questions that you begin to ask yourself of what you would do in this crazy scenario where lives are at stake. We have this female main character who almost unknowingly creates this technology where you can go back in time basically and be put into, it's almost like a connection between your consciousness now and your consciousness from wherever it is that you're going back to, and you just go back straight into that body. And because of that, certain things are able to be changed or happen differently, and it really ends up affecting humanity in such a horrible way. And we have 2 characters who are just trying desperately to try to figure out how to get everything back to the original timeline so that they can save pretty much the human race from nuclear war. It is so incredible. I felt like I was on the edge of my seat the entire time. It is definitely gritty, and I almost want to say dark just in the feelings that you have. A lot of it, there's not a lot of hope. There is loss of loved ones. There's just a lot of really hard things that our characters go through. And so I will say to make sure you're in a good headspace before you go into this book, because I will say that was brought up at our local book club, that there were a few people that were like, this is a tough book for me to read right now. So that is something that I would say immediately off the bat, to just make sure you're really in the mood for something like that. But I was gripped. I really was hooked on it. I finished it, I think, I want to say in 2 or 3 days. For me, I did like Dark Matter better, and I'm not quite sure why, but I think it still is my favorite. I think I ended up giving this one a solid 4 stars, maybe even 4.25. And I feel like if there's one thing that Blake Crouch can do, it's get me to sit down and read. Like, I will just be hooked on whatever he writes. I do think that I'll read more of him in the future as well. I ended up completing a series this month, which is really exciting, which just makes me happy because if you guys know me, I just have a hard time wanting to go right into the next book, even if I'm excited. Like, I always want to put books in between, and then because of that, series sit on my shelf for a long time, which is not my favorite thing to do. I'm trying to be better about that this year, but I did finish the Saints of Steel series, which this one is called Paladin's Faith, and this is by T. Kingfisher. This is the only series I've read by T. Kingfisher, but it has made me excited to read more of their work. I feel like I've talked a lot about this series on my channel already, just because you guys have seen me read it in a lot of reading vlogs, and this one I believe I might have started to read in a reading vlog that might not have come up yet, actually in a doing book things video. But for this one, it just, I felt like was a fun way to end this series. This series really is just fun. It's whimsical, it's also creepy and dark at times, but also funny, and there's a good sense of found family and cozy at times. There is just so much packed into the series that I did really like. I think it's a solid 4-star series for me, and I recommend it to you guys. If you're somebody who might want to try cozy fantasy, even though you like the darker, more gothic or the creepier side of things, this is a really good marriage because it does feel like a cozy fantasy with the fact that there's some talking animals that are actually really funny and really cool, which normally for me would be cheesy, but it's not here. I actually think that one of my favorite characters, or my favorite race in this series, was this type of badger race, which is called the gnolls, and they work alongside with the humans, and I just found them fascinating. They were very funny, and I really liked them. In this series, I would say that they're interconnected standalones, but I do think you have to read them in order, specifically the first two, because the first two, the mystery continues from book 1 to book 2, and then from that we are building off of characters that you have known and loved in the previous books, and we also mention maybe spoilers from the previous books in the series. So I definitely feel that you need to read them in order, and I would highly recommend it. If you're somebody who likes knights in your stories, or gods, or maidens, or just kind of like that kind of a vibe, this is a good series for you. We have these male main characters that all come from this specific order, who were these amazing warriors who, under their god, could pretty much defeat any enemy. They would get almost this superhuman strength taking over them when this battle haze came over them, and they would just be able to defeat any enemy in the name of their god. Right at the beginning of the first book, that god, who's called the Saint of Steel, dies, and when that happens, his warriors, his paladins, no longer have control over this battle haze, and at times can enter into this state where they would not recognize their mother standing right in front of them and could potentially cut them down. And so we have these knights who were really beaten down, and who that's really affected because they used to be good, loyal protectors, and they still are that inside, but they always have this knowledge that at the drop of the hat, they could really seriously hurt people. And I loved each of these male main characters individually. I feel like they were such good people. They were so layered. They were all dealing with trauma because of what they had done in their past, or what they could do potentially. There's also a really good mystery happening specifically in the first two books that I was so hooked by and gripped by. I really wanted to know what was happening and who was doing these horrible things in the city. I will say this series does suffer a little bit from insta love, I would say, but I do feel like in some of the books more than others, I did appreciate that the characters took more of a journey within the romance, but for me that was much more of a subplot and should have been a subplot. I would have liked to dial up even the plot even more and just dial back on the romance, if that makes sense. So again, solid 4-star series. And I really did like the creepy nature of this one. It really makes you want to go back and read Sword Heart, and makes me excited that there's another book coming out, I think later this year, because I just love this world. I love this world. Going into another series that I actually finished this month, which is crazy because I started this around this time last year and I finally finished it, and it's a duology, guys. That's what I'm talking about. It is crazy to me that it took me a year to finish an already completed duology. Both of the books were out. This one is by one of my favorite authors, and that is A Fire Endless by Rebecca Ross. I love this duology. I think it is so underhyped. I think a lot more people should be talking about this. It is for the people who love really beautiful lyrical writing, who love folklore, who love mystical, magical tales of maybe intrigue, and there's also a little bit of politics happening in here. It kind of feels like the setting and feeling of Outlander, because this takes place on a Scottish island, but add in these elemental fae spirits that heavily influence the people who live there and the crops growing and different things like that happening. We are following multiple characters and they are trying to solve this mystery of these young girls being taken on this island. And on this island, it is split in half, where we have a very fertile, very happy side of the island, which is the Clan of the East, which is where our main characters live, and then we have the Clan of the West, who does not have very fertile ground and who has to rely on stealing from the East to survive. And so we have our characters who are wondering if it's their not so friendly neighbors who are taking their daughters, or they're wondering if the spirits of the Fae have been offended and they are leading these girls astray. I would say there's 2 male main characters and 2 female main characters and 2 incredibly beautiful love stories. But our main male character, I would say, is Jack, and he is a bard. He's coming back because the laird of his clan has requested him to come back. And music is really important to these people because that is how they communicate with the Fae spirits. It was really, really beautiful. I don't want to say too much more. This is also a great audiobook, but it does have that feel of like Divine Rivals, Wilde Reverence, how there are these entities, like almost kind of how the gods were in Divine Rivals and Wilde Reverence. We have the Fae spirits in this one, and it just really was so beautiful. Again, Rebecca Ross is just an incredible writer. She's very good at putting you right in this atmosphere, and I'm just excited to keep working my way through her backlist. I literally will read anything this woman writes. I end up giving this book and this duology 5 stars. I really, really loved it. Moving forward, I ended up reading the second book in a series. I am hoping to finish the trilogy this next month because the third book is on my TBR. This is Emily Wilde's Map of the Otherlands. I really like the characters in this book, mainly our female main character and our male main character, because I think they're the only real characters that crossed over into the second book, other than like her canine companion. I really have a fun time with this series. I would say this is a historical, cozy fantasy. This is also very much folklore and feels kind of like a grown-up Spiderwick Chronicles, in the way that in the Spiderwick Chronicles, if you read them as a kid, we have these journals of all these different types of fairies or fae or whatever you want to call them, and they're very traditional and rooted in folklore and rooted in how they've been written throughout our actual history. That's exactly what it feels like when you read this. It feels like a more romantic, grown up but still lighthearted version of the Spiderwick Chronicles, and I really loved that. Our female main character is kind of socially awkward. She's very, very bookish. She's a scholar and she just wants to study the fairies, and in this world they're very much accepted that fairies are real. And she's got another scholar named Wendell who is following her around, and they just have the funniest friendship that ends up turning into a little bit more, and that's all I can say. I don't want to give any spoilers, but I'm really, really enjoying this series. I ended up giving this a solid 4 stars, and I'm having a really fun time with this series. The last 3 books that I read this month, I actually read in a reading vlog called This Book Ends with a God Tier Fantasy, and I just wanted to say, I'm so excited. If this is the quality of fantasy books that are coming out recently, I am so excited to see what comes out next, because I've been, before this month, kind of struggling with fantasy and maybe just feeling very tired of it, or just feeling like it all follows the same kind of genre or equation, which obviously I do love fantasy, specifically romantic fantasy, but I think I was just waiting to really love something and be gripped by something, and that really happened in these last 3 books. The first one I'm going to talk about is Starside by Alex Aster. This was very much a pleasant surprise for me. I have read a few other books by this author, and this is by far my favorite and has made me so excited to continue in the series. We have our female main character, Eris, who has entered into this deadly competition. I do feel like Alex Aster loves her deadly competitions, but she is human and she has entered into this competition where basically you enter into Starside, which is the realm of magic and immortals. You enter into there, and if you can cross the land of Starside and bring back a cup of magic, then you get to keep that and use it however you see fit. Most of those people will use it to bless their land, or maybe to cure a sick loved one, or just have power, whatever it is. And our female main character is in it for a very different reason. In fact, she's in it because she wants to get close to the gods, and instead of taking a cup of magic, she wants to end them. Because of a specific god, her family is gone, and she's the last of her people, the last of her village, the last of her line, and she really just wants to take revenge. I really had a great time with this book. I felt like from the first page we are thrown into the first part of this competition, which is basically you have to make it to this platform and be one of the first 50 or something like that. And when I tell you it is deadly, it is deadly. People are getting cut down left, right, and center, and she makes it onto there. But who else makes it on there? Except for one of the king's favorite guards who always wears a helmet, so she doesn't even know what he looks like, but she has had a horrible altercation with him in the past, and she is very much upset that he's going to be there in this competition, and she just has this feeling that he's going to have it out to get her, that he is going to have it out for her. Through the course of this competition, which did take pretty much the entirety of this book, it's really interesting to see her immediately make alliances and then have certain things happen, and her and this person that she hates quickly have to become these allies. They do not like each other. They don't even respect each other, but they need each other. I really loved all of the action sequences in this. I loved the creatures that we faced. I loved just the different parts of the competition. I absolutely loved specifically this one part where if you want to be able to get like a flying mount to take you across the competition and cut down days of your time, you basically have to climb up to the top of this tree, jump down, and hope that one of them catches you. It was very, very much high risk the entire time, high stakes. The one thing that I will say is that I wanted to see our female main character save herself a little bit more. I feel like she had to rely so heavily on being saved by our male main character, whether she knew it or not. There were so many instances where she would have died. Her life would have ended, and I just wanted to see the human girl who was so desperate to see her family. I wanted to see her come out on top sometimes, and I really felt like I didn't see that. I felt like for the most part, she was getting in these really hard situations. Obviously, it's a deadly competition. That's just a personal thing for me. I just wish that her intellect or her cunning or something else could have really saved her a few times. The other thing that I will say as well is that there were just a few instances where she did get that thing where a lot of female main characters in fantasies have, where they just talk too much for their own good, where even though they say that they're single-minded in their purpose, they just have to do something or say something that seems out of character for somebody who's single-minded in their purpose. For example, if there's a guy that says something kind of rude to her, she has to say something and then be like, oh man, he's gonna end my life for that. And it's like, if you really, 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 really wanted to avenge your family, wouldn't you just be ignoring the people around you? You don't have to be this spitfire, this loudmouth female main character. I would just like to see more female main characters, maybe who have a little bit more of a mature mindset in these deadly situations and act like somebody in that situation would actually act. But that was a very small thing. That was really only 2 instances in this entire book, and I feel like I still rated it pretty highly. I ended up giving it a 4.5 star. It was really great. It wasn't perfect, but it was so good. It really was. And I'm so excited, especially after that ending, to see where we go from here. The next book, you guys, was so good that it broke my 8-month fantasy 5-star drought. And that is Weaving Shaw by Heba Al-Wasiti. I'm probably saying that so wrong. I'm sorry, guys. This book is so good. This is the book for the girls who love the more gothic type of fantasy romances where there's yearning and tension, but you're just getting like the touch of the hand or a lingering look or just a moment. But I also want to say this is also such a slow burn that Going into this blind, after the first 120 pages, I actually didn't think this was a romance. I could see how I would want this guy to be the love interest, but I'm getting nothing. But it was in the best way possible, because when we started to get notes of a romance or romantic feelings or thoughts, it was crumbs, but it was so good. It was so good, you guys. It kind of felt like Peaky Blinders, and then also like a little bit of a mix of, we have this refugee people who's living in the same space as them, and our female main character belongs to that race, and so we see her people being very oppressed. Her mom has since passed away, her father's in jail. From the beginning, she's got these really high stakes on her, and she ends up coming across our male main character, who is called the Saint of Silence, who people go to sell secrets for money or for things that they need. And she originally goes to him because her brother has some type of cough that people normally don't recover from, and the medicine is not working. He needs another round and she cannot afford it, so she goes to him to sell a secret. She gets more than she bargained for. He ends up kind of manipulating her into working for him, and it's just a really interesting working relationship between the two of them. There's so much going on that I can't tell you, but just the dark gothic vibes of this and the slow burn, it was everything. I cannot wait for the next book. And the fact that she can talk to the dead, I just love that in a book. I really, really do. 5 stars, no notes. And the more that I am separated from this, the more I love it. The last book that I'm going to talk to you guys about, I am also so excited to talk to you guys about. It was also included in that vlog, but man, oh man, I loved this book, and that is This Kingdom Will Not Kill Me by Ilona Andrews. This kind of felt like high fantasy or epic fantasy. I don't know if those can be used interchangeably. Somebody tell me if they can, but it really felt like that. It was so interesting. It was so layered. There was so many moving parts and pieces and characters and things to remember, but I loved every second of it. It just felt so real and really, really authentic to the story and to what the authors were trying to portray with this. We have our female main character, who she is absolutely obsessed with this epic fantasy series that has not been finished and might never be finished. And she has read it so many times. She knows it front, backwards, left, right, and knows everything about every character, exactly what happens to them. And one day she wakes up naked in the gutter of this city that she has read so much about in these fantasy books that she loves. It's called Caer Toren, and it is a cutthroat city. And starting from the bottom is crazy. Like, it almost felt like you're playing this video game in a sense, where you start with nothing and you have to figure out how to collect items of clothing to wear and how to get money and all of these different things, like a little bit of like Breath of the Wild, or if you've played the Zelda games. It kind of reminded me of that a little bit in the best way. And we have our female main character, Maggie, who has to use her brain, her intellect to rise in this world, and she does that by giving secrets to people, because she knows obviously everything that's happening in this world except for how everything ends. And it's really cool because as a true fantasy lover, Maggie herself has her favorite characters, and so she comes across people that she's like, you know what, I know this person doesn't get justice in the book. I know they end up dying a horrible death, and I'm gonna help them to be able to escape that. And isn't that what we all want? I mean, like, come on. You're telling me that if you didn't go into the Throne of Glass series, and if you could have saved the 13, you wouldn't have? She represented us fantasy girls so well, and I feel like normally books like this can be really trendy as far as like, we're bringing a female main character from a world that has TikTok and all of this stuff, and she could be really annoying about it, honestly, and take us out of the story. But I feel like the only time she mentioned modern things, it was kind of funny. The way that she mentioned it in her mind of like, okay, these people have no idea that this exists, or this or that, and I just loved it. I have no idea where we're gonna go from here. There are so many characters I love. There are so many male main characters that I love. We could go so many different places with this, and I am set for it. Hi, this is me an hour later after I filmed this, because I just realized that there is actually another book that I read that I forgot to talk to you guys about, so here I am. I actually finished a 3rd series this month, and so I feel like we should talk about it, and that was the Rose Bargain duology. I did end up finishing The Thorn Queen by Sacha Peyton Smith. I'm sure that you've heard of this before, that it's Cruel Prince meets Bridgerton meets Selection. It's just a fun YA fantasy romance. I really like the atmosphere and the imagery in this book. I feel like I could clearly see not only the fairy realm, but also England very, very well in both of these installments. I thought that the characters were complex and very interesting, and that there were choices that were made that were very interesting. I loved that there was this element of doing anything for your sister and for your family. I loved that side of things. And I can't say too much about this book in particular just because it is the conclusion. I will say that I would give this duology probably a solid 4 stars. I do think I liked the Thorn Queen slightly less than I liked the Rose Bargain, and I think it just has to do with our female main character and our male main character being separated for a good portion of the book, and just having these certain obstacles, and one of them being jealousy and closeness with other characters that I feel like I wish would have been done in the first book. I know it maybe wouldn't have made sense, but they're kind of issues that I don't love to go through in the second book after we've already established our love for each other and how we do anything for each other. I felt like there was a certain close relationship that was built between our male main character and somebody else that was irking me, and I don't know if that's just because for me, I'm like, I want my male main characters to have just only the female main characters' best interests in mind as far as like females in the universe, if that makes sense. But that was just one thing, and it might have been a me thing, but it did lessen my enjoyment of a little bit of it. Overall, I had a great time with the series, and I feel like it's a good one for the spring and summertime. I definitely gave off those vibes. If you're looking for something fun that feels like pretty fast-paced and that you can finish pretty quickly, then I'd recommend this one. And I think I would settle probably on a 3.75 or for this book. And guys, that does bring us to the end of this video for all of the books that I read in the month of June. I am so ready to start my July TBR. I'm so excited for it, and I feel like I'm just going to continue in this mood of reading fantasy. I think I hit historical fiction and literary fiction so hard earlier in the year, and I think I'm feeling a shift, and who knows, maybe the pendulum might switch back in the middle of the month, and we'll be surprised at the books I have to talk to you about at the end of the month. But thank you guys so much for watching, especially if you stayed to the end of this video. And if you did, leave me a little eagle emoji for my favorite read of this month, which was This Kingdom Will Not Kill Me. Or just tell me the best book that you read this past month, because I'm always looking for recommendations. And that is it, my friends. I will see you guys in my next video.